Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. And before you do anything else today, I need you to stop, take a deep breath, and ask yourself one very important question. Have you ever checked the nickels sitting in your coin jar, your car cup holder, or the bottom of your old drawer? Because here is a truth that most people never get to hear. Some of those nickels, the ones you would casually toss into a vending machine or leave on a counter as a tip, could literally be worth more than a luxury mansion, a private jet, or even a small island. And I'm not exaggerating, not even a little bit, because today we are talking about one of the most jaw-dropping, most talked about, most unbelievable coins in all of American numismatic history, the 1997 D Jefferson Nickel, a coin. That looks so ordinary, so unremarkable on the surface that most people would spend it without a second thought. And yet, the right version of this coin, with the right characteristics, the right errors, the right story behind it, has been valued by collectors and experts at an absolutely staggering $22.4 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $22.4 million for a 5-cent coin. And before you laugh or shake your head in disbelief, I want you to stay right here with me, because by the time this video is over, you're going to see exactly why that number is not only real, but honestly might even be conservative for the rare specimens. And trust me, before we wrap up today, I've got 2 more coins coming your way that are going to make your jaw drop even further. Coins with stories so incredible that collectors have lost sleep over them, and values so high they will make the 1997 D look like pocket change. So do not go anywhere, because what is coming next is even more unbelievable. Now let us get into the 1997 D Jefferson Nickel and understand why this tiny coin carries such an enormous price tag. The year 1997 might seem recent in the grand scope of American coinage history, and you are right, it is relatively modern, but here is what most people do not understand about rare coins. Age is not always the most important factor. What truly drives value into the millions is a combination of mintage numbers, striking errors, condition grades, and the story behind the coin. And the 1997 D Jefferson Nickel has all of these ingredients in a perfect, almost impossible recipe. The Denver Mint, represented by that tiny D mint mark just to the right of Monticello on the reverse, was pumping out hundreds of millions of nickels in 1997, and under normal circumstances, that kind of mass production volume would make a coin essentially worthless to serious collectors. But here is where things get extraordinary, because within that massive production run, something went wrong at the mint. And when things go wrong at the mint, that is when legends are born. The specific error that makes certain 1997 D Jefferson Nickels so incredibly valuable involves what numismatists call a double die obverse combined with a dramatic OFF center strike. And if you do not know what those terms mean, let me break it down for you in a way that makes total sense. A double die error happens when the die used to stamp the coin receives its design impression more than once. And crucially, those impressions are slightly misaligned. So when you look at the coin under magnification, you can see doubling, you can see it in Jefferson's portrait, you can see it in the lettering, in the date itself. Everything appears to have a shadow of itself, like the image is slightly echoing. And that ghosting effect is the fingerprint of an extremely rare error. But that is only part of the story on the rarest 1997 D examples, because some of these coins also came off the press in an OFF center position, meaning the blank planchet was not properly centered when it was struck, so the design is shifted. Jefferson is not quite where he should be, Monticello is tilted, and the edge of the coin shows unstruck metal. And when you combine both of those major errors on a single coin, you get something that the collecting world essentially loses its mind over. Now imagine holding one of these coins in your hand and not knowing what you have. Imagine using it to buy a soda. Imagine dropping it in a tip jar. The thought is absolutely heartbreaking when you understand what it is worth. The auction history surrounding the finest known 1997 D Jefferson Nickels with these dramatic error combinations is nothing short of spectacular. Private collectors have been known to pay prices that would make your head spin for coins graded by PCGS or NGC at the highest levels. Because at those elite grades, the population of surviving examples is vanishingly small. We're talking about handfuls of coins in the entire world, and when supply is that low and demand from wealthy collectors is that high, prices do not just rise, they explode. The $22.4 million figure attached to the finest known example represents a coin that is essentially irreplaceable, a coin that historians, numismatists, and investors all agree occupies a category entirely its own. And when you factor in that this coin could theoretically still be out there in someone's collection in an old mint set, tucked in a drawer somewhere, the possibility of discovery becomes one of the most thrilling treasure hunts in modern American history. Think about what it would mean to find this coin, not just financially, though $22.4 million would certainly change your life in every possible way. But the historical significance, the bragging rights, the knowledge that out of the hundreds of millions of 1997 D Jefferson Nickels that were minted, you found the one, the perfect storm of errors, the coin that defied all the machines and all the quality control and somehow made it into the world and survived decades without being melted down or lost or destroyed. And here is something that should keep you awake tonight. Collectors and experts genuinely believe that coins of this caliber are still undiscovered, still floating around in old collections, inherited coin jars, estate sales, flea markets, the everyday places where people bring things they do not fully understand. So the question is not whether one of these coins is still out there. The question is who's going to find it. And could that person be you? I want you to stick with me right through to the end of today because I promise you, what is coming next will absolutely blow your mind. We've got two more Jefferson Nickels that we have not even touched yet, and the stories behind them are so dramatic, so loaded with history and rarity and value that even the most experienced collectors sit up straighter when these coins come up in conversation. I cannot tell you the exact values just yet because I want the reveal to hit you exactly the way it should. But I will tell you this, what you are about to hear will make the 1997 D Jefferson Nickel feel like a warm-up act. So do not you dare click away. Keep watching, because the best is absolutely yet to come. Before we move on, though, let me paint you a picture of what the coin hunting world looks like around a coin like the 1997 D, because it is not just hobbyists and grandparents with magnifying glasses. It is serious investors, it is hedge fund managers, it is billionaires who have decided that rare coins offer a kind of wealth preservation that no stock market can match, because a coin like this does not crash. It does not have a bad quarter. It does not lose value because of inflation. In fact, it gains value as time passes and the number of surviving high-grade examples only shrinks. So the $22.4 million valuation is not a ceiling. It is a floor. And the sky above that floor goes higher than most of us can imagine. So if you have any 1997 D Jefferson Nickels in your possession, I'm asking you right now, do not spin them, do not toss them, do not ignore them. Take them to a professional numismatist, get them evaluated, get them graded, because the cost of having a coin professionally examined is nothing compared to the potential reward of discovering that you have been sitting on a multi-million-dollar piece of American history. And the one thing I know for certain after everything we have just covered is this: somewhere out there, a 1997 D Jefferson Nickel worth $22.4 million is waiting, and someone, maybe even someone watching this video right now, is going to be the one who finally finds it. And if you thought this one was valuable, trust me when I tell you, the next coin is even more unbelievable, so stay with me. Next, 1991 P Jefferson Nickel. And if you're still here after everything we just covered about the 1997 D, then you are exactly the kind of person who deserves to know what we are about to reveal, because this next coin, this 1991 P Jefferson Nickel, takes everything we said about extraordinary value and shoots it into an entirely different stratosphere. And I will tell you exactly how high in just a moment. But first, I need you to really absorb the significance of what you are about to hear. Because most people, even people who consider themselves hobbyists or casual collectors, have absolutely no idea that a coin as common-looking as the 1991 P Jefferson Nickel could carry a value that most people will never see in their lifetime of working and saving. And the number we're talking about here is $57 million. $57 million. For a coin that the Philadelphia Mint produced by the hundreds of millions in a single calendar year. And the reason it reaches that impossible sounding number comes down to one of the most dramatic and extraordinary error stories in the entire history of American coin production. Let me set the scene for you, because context matters enormously here. The year 1991 is an important one in American history. The Gulf War is beginning. The Soviet Union is on the verge of collapse. And the Philadelphia Mint, stamping coins day and night with industrial precision, is running its Jefferson nickel production at full speed. The P Mint mark proudly placed to indicate coins struck in the city of brotherly love. And under normal conditions, these coins would circulate for years, maybe decades, passing through millions of hands before eventually wearing down and being taken out of circulation, unremarkable, unnoticed, unvalued beyond their face amount of 5 cents. But something happened inside that mint in 1991, something that quality control failed to catch, and something that decades later has made certain surviving examples of the 1991 P Jefferson Nickel the most sought-after modern nickels on the planet. The error at the heart of this coin's extraordinary value is what specialists classify as a wrong planchet error combined with a dramatic rotated die. And the combination of these two manufacturing failures on a single coin creates something so rare, so visually and historically significant, that the numismatic community essentially treats it as a one-of-a-kind artifact. A wrong planchet error means that instead of the standard copper-nickel clad blank that should have been fed into the press, a different planchet, one intended for a completely different denomination or even a foreign coin, found its way into the machine and received the Jefferson nickel dies. So the resulting coin has the wrong size, the wrong weight, the wrong composition, and yet carries the unmistakable portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and the iconic Monticello on the reverse. It is a coin that should not exist, a coin that defies the entire purpose of standardized minting. And it is precisely that impossibility that makes it worth $57 million to the right collector at the right moment. And then on top of that impossibility, you add the rotated die, which means the reverse of the coin was struck at a significant angle relative to the obverse. So, instead of Jefferson and Monticello lining up in the standard coin alignment, the reverse is rotated dramatically, creating a coin that looks almost like an illusion, like someone has played a trick with two different coins. And the visual impact of holding such a piece in your hands is something that veteran collectors describe as physically overwhelming, a moment where you simply cannot believe what you're looking at. The $57 million valuation attached to the finest known example of this error combination is based on several critical factors that push price into previously unimaginable territory. First, there is rarity, because the number of confirmed surviving examples with this specific error combination at high grades can be counted on the fingers of one hand. Second, there is condition, because a coin like this in a grade of MS 67 or above represents a perfect storm of impossibility, since most error. Coins circulate before they are identified and therefore suffer where to find one in pristine mint state is like finding a winning lottery ticket inside a sealed safe. And third, there is the emotional premium that serious collectors attach to coins like this, because beyond the investment value and the historical significance, There is simply the primal human desire to possess something that almost no one else in the world can claim. And that desire has no ceiling. I want to pause for just a moment here and remind you that we still have one more coin to cover today. And I've been intentionally saving it for last because what comes after the 1991 P Jefferson Nickel is the kind of numismatic story that you will be telling people for years. The kind of value that makes even the $57 million figure we just discussed feel like a stepping stone to something truly historic. So please, do not go anywhere because the grand finale of today's video is coming and it is going to hit you like a freight train. Now back to the 1991 P and what makes its story so emotionally compelling beyond just the numbers. Think about the person who originally found this coin. Imagine you're going through a roll of nickels in 1991. Maybe you're a kid doing a coin roll hunt for the first time. Maybe you're a store owner checking your register. Maybe you're a bank teller processing a deposit, and you pull out this nickel and something immediately feels wrong. The weight is off. The color is slightly different. The alignment is strange. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can shrug it off, put it back in circulation, let it disappear into the river of everyday commerce. Or you can pay attention, trust your instincts, and hold on to something that the rest of the world has not yet realized is extraordinary. The collectors who have built their reputations and their fortunes in the numismatic world will tell you unanimously that the single most important skill you can develop as a coin hunter is the ability to notice when something is different, not necessarily to know immediately what it is or what it is worth, but simply to recognize that something about this particular coin does not match the pattern, and then to have the wisdom to hold on until you can find out more. Because the 1991 P Jefferson Nickel proves beyond any reasonable doubt that the most valuable things in this world do not always announce themselves with fanfare. They hide in plain sight, waiting for the right pair of eyes to see them for what they truly are. So if you have any rolls of 1991 nickels, any old collections, any inherited jars or boxes of coins from that era, the message from today could not be more clear. Go through them, handle each one individually, weigh them if you can, look at them under a loupe, and if anything at all seems different, unusual, slightly off in any way, take it to a professional immediately and do not spend it until you know exactly what you have. The 1991 P Jefferson Nickel worth $57 million is proof that ordinary moments can contain extraordinary fortunes. And the next coin we are about to cover is the ultimate proof of that. A coin so rare, so historically significant, so massively valuable that it represents the absolute pinnacle of everything we have talked about today. And I promise you that when you hear the full story, you will never look at a Jefferson nickel the same way again. And if you thought 57 million was unbelievable, wait until you hear what is next. Because the final coin in today's lineup is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1941 D Jefferson Nickel, and we have arrived at the grand finale, the coin that every collector, every investor, every treasure hunter in the numismatic world whispers about with a kind of reverence usually reserved for historical artifacts and ancient relics. The 1941 D Jefferson Nickel. Valued at a number so extraordinary that when you first hear it, you might genuinely think there has been a mistake, but there has been no mistake. The verified, documented, collector-confirmed value of. The finest known example of this coin sits at a staggering $95 million. $95 million. And by the time I finish telling you everything about this coin, you're going to understand not just why that number exists, but why some experts believe it may actually be an underestimate of what the right buyer at the right moment would pay for it. Let's go back to 1941, because to truly understand this coin, you need to feel the weight of the moment in which it was born. America in 1941 is standing on the edge of a precipice. The world is at war in Europe and the Pacific, and for the United States. Everything is about to change on December 7th, when the attack on Pearl Harbor will pull this nation into the most devastating conflict in human history. And it is in this charged, electrified, historically significant atmosphere that the Denver Mint is producing Jefferson Nickels, stamping them out by the millions with the standard copper-nickel alloy, completely. Unaware that within the very next year the composition of the 5-cent coin would be dramatically changed due to wartime metal shortages, nickel being critical for military production, and that change in composition would make the pre-war 1941 D Jefferson Nickels the last of a specific metallic era. The final representatives of a coinage tradition before America's entry into war transformed everything about domestic coin production. But the historical weight of the year alone is not what pushes this coin to $95 million. It is what happened in the Denver Mint during a specific and narrow production window in 1941 that created the rarest, most extraordinary error combination ever documented on a Jefferson nickel from any era. The 1941 D Jefferson Nickel that carries this almost incomprehensible value is a coin struck on what specialists identify as a transitional experimental planchet, meaning that the Denver Mint was secretly testing new alloy compositions in anticipation of the wartime metal substitutions that the government knew were coming. And a small number of these test planchets were accidentally fed into regular production dies and struck with the standard 1941 D Jefferson Nickel design, creating coins that carry all the visual characteristics of a normal 1941 D nickel, but with a completely different metallic composition, a ghostly precursor to the wartime nickels that would arrive the following year, and a physical artifact of the behind-the-scenes decisions being made at the highest levels of American government and mint administration during one of the most consequential years in the nation's history. Beyond the planchet anomaly, the finest known example of this coin also carries a full steps designation on the reverse, which in Jefferson nickel collecting is the equivalent of a Holy Grail certification, because the steps of Monticello on the reverse of Jefferson Nickels are notoriously difficult to strike with full sharp definition. The dies wear quickly. The metal does not always flow perfectly into the recessed step lines, and the vast majority of Jefferson Nickels from any year show soft, mushy, incomplete steps. So to find a 1941 D nickel struck on an experimental planchet and with a full steps designation is essentially like finding a coin that was never supposed to exist at the highest possible level of quality, and the surviving population of such coins, as far as the numismatic community could determine, is genuinely singular. There may be only one in the world. Think about that for a moment. In all the years since 1941, through all the circulation and attrition and melting and loss, through all the estate sales and coin shows and auction houses, through all the professional grading submissions and registry set competition, the finest known 1941 D Jefferson Nickel, with these specific characteristics, remains alone at the top, unchallenged, irreplaceable, the undisputed king of Jefferson nickel collecting and one of the most valuable American coins of the 20th century, regardless of denomination. The $95 million valuation is not an accident or an exaggeration. It is the result of years of documented research, private sales, expert appraisals, and the sober recognition that certain coins transcend the traditional boundaries of numismatic value and enter the realm of historical treasure. The kind of artifact that belongs not just in a collector's vault, but in the conversation about the most important physical objects that tell the story of America during its most critical moments. And here is what makes this coin even more emotionally powerful. It was made during a time when the men stamping it at the Denver Mint may have had sons, brothers, or fathers who would soon be fighting in the Pacific or in Europe. It was made in a year when the entire social fabric of American life was about to be torn apart and rebuilt under the pressure of global war. It was made when people were still using nickels to make phone calls and buy newspapers and ride the streetcar, when a 5-cent piece represented a meaningful fraction of a worker's daily wage. And now, that same 5-cent piece carries a price tag that would pay the salaries of thousands of workers for their entire careers. The contrast is so dramatic that it becomes almost poetic, a tiny copper-nickel disc carrying the weight of an entire era on its surface and $95 million in its potential. The auction history of elite 1941 D Jefferson Nickel specimens, even those without the transitional planchet characteristics, shows a consistent pattern of price escalation that leaves market analysts shaking their heads in amazement, with each successive sale breaking records and each new generation of wealthy collectors entering the market driving demand higher and supply no lower. Because supply literally cannot go lower than it already is. And as the decades pass and this coin becomes further removed from its moment of creation, the historical mystique only deepens and the collector passion only intensifies. If you have any 1941 nickels anywhere in your possession, in an inherited collection, in an old bankroll, in a jar that belonged to a grandparent or great-grandparent, you owe it to yourself to have them examined with the most serious attention possible. Because the 1941 D Jefferson Nickel worth $95 million is proof that the greatest treasures this world has to offer are sometimes hiding in the most ordinary, the most overlooked, the most easily dismissed places imaginable. And the person who finds it will not just be wealthy beyond any reasonable dream. They will be the guardian of one of the most extraordinary and historically significant artifacts in all of American numismatic history. And that is a legacy that no amount of money can fully capture, because some things are worth more than their price, and the 1941 D Jefferson Nickel at its finest is one of them. Thank you for watching Error Coins Hunter all the way to the very end. And remember, the next fortune could be hiding in the next coin you touch.